Hello and welcome to TidyX episode 19. Alright, so TidyX is a screencast where we go through and try to explain how our code works. My name is Ellis Hughes. I'm a statistical programmer at Fred Hutch Cancer Research Center. You can find me on Twitter at Ellis_Hughes.
And I'm Patrick Ward. I do data analysis in sport. You can find me on Twitter at OSPPatrick. And you can contact the both of us either on our YouTube channel at the video of your perusing or via Gmail at tidy.explained@gmail.com. And we are on episode 19 with a pretty cool data set.
Yes, we are. Actually, quick note too, we also have a Twitter handle for this screencast now. It's at tidy_explained. So go ahead and subscribe there too. And we post things throughout the week to get you excited, to remind you what we have that's available. So join that too. All right, yeah, so the data set this week is on astronauts. And so I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I always wanted to be an astronaut. So this is kind of fun. Like, cool. Scientists, top of their game, doing really crazy cool stuff. So this is organized by Maria and Tatsuya. And so they've got a bunch of data for each row represents a different mission and a different astronaut. So it's really rich with data, really fun to go through. Giorgio put this together for the Tidy Tuesday. So lots of great stuff here. I could tell everyone was really excited this week about the data. So excited.
I think if you've never really checked them out, if this is like your first screencast ever watching, just go on Twitter, hashtag Tidy Tuesday, and some of the visualizations were beautiful. It was like something that you might see in like National Geographic or Scientific America. I mean, it was like what a way to tell a story with data. It was incredible. So
fun. People just had so much fun this week. And it was really hard actually to pick one of them. But we have to, right? We want to share with you guys something great and something new. So we ended up picking Lauen Pandori's submission this week, which I thought was a lot of fun to go through. It was a table that she made that has some extra visualization techniques thrown in there, using I think she used format table. The package format table.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really cool because it combines the benefits of a table, which is just the readable pieces of it, but then it's got these visualization pieces to it, so you can get like best of both worlds. So she has,
and it's space, and every mission needs a dashboard, right?
Oh yes,
mission control needs a dashboard, so why not?
Exactly. So
cool.
So she's got her code available on her GitHub. So we went and pulled that down, and let me open up my RStudio here, and so we'll go through her code and explain how it all works, so you too can make a pretty sweet dashboard. So first things first, she has at the very top this nice header that we've now seen a few weeks in a row. So this is where you're documenting like the purpose of the script, what the title is, who wrote it, when they wrote it, when it was last edited. And so, she's got all the content here. I love the purpose. Make a cool table. All right. After that, she loads in the libraries she's going to be using, and then she has this nice benefit of tagging what she's going to be using them for. And so loading tidyverse, like everybody these days does for data manipulation and all the tools that come with that. And it is Tuesday. And then format table for making nice tables.
Cool.
So one thing she did post into Twitter was asking for tutorials on how to use React table and format table. She wanted to thank everybody for replying to that. Also, we thank you because the R community is great and help each other out so much, and that's why I love R so much.
She also was on it when we emailed to ask her about her code. She emailed back some, oh great, and can you answer these questions, which is super cool. So the people have spoken, and we shall answer today.
Yes, we will. So
we will answer.
Stay with us. All right, so after that, she loads in the data. She uses the long slug. You could also use the Tidy Tuesday R package on version 1.0.1 on CRAN. I prefer that, but I wrote it, so I'm a little bit biased. Then she has some functions that she uses later in the code. And I like here is that she defines, well, I guess here she defines what she's trying to be doing with the function and then describing information about where she got, like, inspiration from how to create this. So, like, she wrote this calculate mode function, which calculates which is the most frequently used value in a set of, like, character values. So what is the most common character value that exists in there? She sources where she got her information from, which is always a great idea, because you might forget why things are done the way they are, and they could be explained in that Stack Overflow post, or just being able to go back to it because it could be updated in the future. Somebody could come up with a better way to do it and post it into Stack Overflow, and you can go back and check that out. So that's just always a great thing to be doing. So she's got this function calculate mode. It'll first figure out. So we actually hadn't seen tabulate before. Neither of us had used that before. So you passed in a character vector as x. You find the unique values of x. Match will then identify. It'll basically do binning for you to do a count of what is the most common thing that exists here. And that's what this whole line does, and then return that actual value. So if you have a character vector of like AABC, this calculate mode would return A, right, as a like theoretical version of that. Next, she has this other function she wrote, which capitalized the first letter of the occupation. She kind of records where she get this inspiration from here. So she's splitting the string that you pass in based on the. So this will split it so that you get a vector of basically. Actually, I don't know. She doesn't. Oh, she's splitting it so you end up with individual characters all the way through. And then, splitting on white space, excuse me.
Yeah, splitting on the white space.
Yeah. And then capitalize the first letter in each one. So she wrote a function that does this, and that's pretty sweet. But there's also a function inside of the stringr package.
Yeah.
Do you remember what it was called, Patrick?
It's like I've used it before. Title, text to title. Is that what it is? Text to title or something like that?
STR to title.
String to title. There it is. Yeah.
STR to title. And so this will do exactly what she wrote there. That's awesome that she wrote her own code to do that, because that, I mean, means you're like flexing your mental arm muscles. But it's also nice sometimes to not have to worry about doing it. And so future reference, STR to title. So then she applies the capitalization. Why don't I just load everything in? Because I always get ahead of myself and don't do that. So yeah, she is taking the occupation field and then going to capitalize it through her function she wrote there. So she uses supply, and so this is one of the apply family of functions. And what it'll do here is for each entry in Astro occupation, so for each row essentially, it'll apply this function cap str, which will capitalize it, the first letter in each word. And then she's supply, stands for simplified apply. So it'll try to simplify the results into some sort of output. And so in this case, because it always returns a character vector of length 1, it'll create a vector length of the number of entries you have in there. The dangerous thing about supply is it doesn't always return the same type. So if for some reason she were to drop in a vector that then didn't get split properly, and then it returned a character vector of length 2, this would not be the same output that she was expecting. And that can be a danger with that. So supply, I love it. I use it a lot. But you have to be cognizant of the potential risks around that. And so I would maybe, rather than doing a supply, I do a lapply, which is a list apply. So it'll return a list. And then you can expressly convert it into the vector you want using a do call C. But that doesn't happen this time, so we can continue going forward. So yeah, she's assigning that output into occupation 2, so she's not overriding her field, which is usually good practice too. So next, she's going to go through and calculate summary data that she'll be then plotting. Patrick, you want to take us through this?
Yeah, so she's going to create a new. So one thing we would say, we kind of touched on this last week where we got in a bit of trouble, and it was my fault. Where I created a new data frame by naming it the same as an old data frame. So in theory, I wrote over a data frame, which then created a whole mess of issues later on down the road. So when possible, you want to change it. Like maybe it's called Astro 2, maybe it's called Astro Summary underscore summary or exact, something that maybe defines it so that we're not overwriting it, but that's okay for right now. Just a kind of a mental note there. So she's got the Astro data set, and she's going to go ahead and group by nationality, because that's what she cares about. And she's going to create this summary table, and she does a nice job hashtagging out every one of the steps along the way. The first one being the percent of astronauts rounded to 2 decimal places. And she does this by taking the group by nationality, the length of each nationality is going to give us our astronauts, and then dividing by the total. So this is representative of the percent of astronauts over the entire data set, the whole thing. The first mission, obviously, is she's going to use the min function there to get the year of the mission. So that's going to be the first mission grouped by nationality. So the first mission for each, we'll call it country, nationality country. And then she gets the most common occupation using the mode function. So this is calculate mode. And she does that because there's, I think, 3 or 4 different occupation types. There's like civilian, there's military, obviously astronauts can come from the military. Then there's like, people who went through the NASA route and, science and stuff like that. So of the occupation to get the most common occupation type.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right, so let's execute that. I didn't load those in. That's my bad. All right, so let's run that again. All right.
Good. And then she does a little cleanup job.
Mm-hmm.
So the cleanup job is basically she's just trying to prep this for her nice, cool looking table that we showed you at the outset. So here she does a little bit of arranging of the percent of astronauts. She does a descending because she wants the highest on the top. So we're going high to low. She wants to filter out any astronauts that, so basically the countries that have one person or something, one person that's ever gone to space for them. She's just going to get rid of those and filter out everybody that's greater than 1%, 1% or greater. So anybody without any. Renaming nationality, she just changes it to a format that she wants for her table.
Mm-hmm.
And then mutate is she's going to actually take percent of astronauts and multiply by 100 because it's on a value between 0 and 1 right now. She's going to multiply it by 100. When we get into our example, we'll show you a super easy way that you can do this right within the format table, and it'll calculate it automatically for you.
Yeah, and so then this is the results we get. So this is the table she has where it's nationality, percent of astronauts that have gone up to space. This is then the values that she has there, first mission and most common occupation that she calculated. All right, so now that she throws it into format table, I guess she's doing a little call out there to littlemissdata.com. I guess she used that to help inform what she does. So she uses Astro as the data set that she's passing in there, which is, what we just generated here. She's using a line. So this is telling it exactly which alignment she wants to be using with her data set. So L stands for left, C stands for center, R stands for right. So this is saying she wants the first column to be aligned to the left, the second column to be centered, and the third and fourth columns to be left aligned. And then she's doing this piece here, which is the formatting, which is a really cool part of format table, where she's now going through and generating this color bar and going to be running it on percent of astronauts. So it's then going to be creating those bars that we saw in the preview, coloring them blue, and the size of the bar is based on the value that exists in there. So I believe they're going to be relative to each other. So let's execute all that, and this is the table we get. All right.
Cool.
Yep. Awesome. So we get the U.S., USSR, Russia, Japan. This bar here to show just a very visual display of the size, the percent of astronauts that exist for each nationality there. You can see when they performed their first mission. So the USSR, Russia, 61, US, 62. Most common occupations, I don't know exactly what MSP stands for, but apparently that's very common in the U.S. for our
I think
astronauts.
it's the military. Is it military? Maybe not.
Yeah. China has flight engineers as their most common astronaut. So I don't know. It's just an interesting way to look at the data. You get the combination, like we said, of the visual combined with the actual content there. So it's a great like in between a full just a plot, and a table.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like we talked about at the beginning too, when we reached out to her asking if we could go through and explain her code, she's like, "Awesome, great. I have some questions for you too." And so that we have this next strip here that is going to go through and explain how to do those. So when she reached out to us, she asked for, okay, I wanted to be adding flags into my table, but I didn't have the chance to do that. Could you show us how to do that? Next would be, how would I perform conditional formatting if that was something I was interested in doing in my format table? And finally, how would I export this? Because like when we showed it, it showed in the HTML or in the viewer in our studio, and she actually limited the size of her data set because she wanted to be able to take a nice screenshot of it to put it onto Twitter. But what if I wanted something larger or put it in a Shiny? Like, how would I do that and how would I save that? So we'll go through that now. So I went through, and to figure out how to do the flags, we need to get an image of each flag that exists. And so I did some Googling. I found, let me see if I have it. This countryflags.io has a nice little API for us to be pulling down images for the different flags of lots of different countries around or in the world. So what I did in order to get the codes that they did is I did some web scraping. Oh, that's the wrong. There we go. This one. So I read in the HTML, or read in the. So I did some web scraping. So load rvest. I then went through and scraped their home screen there to get all the codes that are available, and I did some quick going through to pair those two up. What's the country code that they exist combined with the full name that they have there, so that we could do some nice pairing with that. We've discussed a lot of web scraping in the past. You can check out any one of our videos that has more details on that, because this isn't the point of this video, so I'm just going to kind of skip through that. Then I write a function here where we can pass in the country name, the full country name, and it'll return to us the HTML that we need to be using to put into our format table to be putting in the country's flag there. So this is going to go through for each country code that we pass, country name we pass to it. It'll figure out the code and then generate the HTML around that, or the file path, which is the website, and then this paste here will then generate the actual HTML for us. So let's run that. I then use mutate in order to generate the new flag column. But first, some of the nationalities that existed in the actual Astro dataset weren't the names of countries that were available. So we just had to do a little bit of mapping here. So when it's US, it actually stands for United States. At least that's the name of the country that's in countryflags.io. With USSR Russia, that's also known as the Russian Federation there. And then every other country that existed works. We then pass get country flag, nationality to get country flag, and generate the flag column there. And then we pass it into the format table, the exact same one that Lauren had earlier. So let's execute that. And would you look at that?
Look at that. Pretty cool.
We've got our flags here, but look at that. Japan, you can't really tell what's going on there because of it's the white background there. So one thing I did is I thought about it a little bit more. I'm like, well, why don't we add a div, which is an HTML tag that we can add some styling elements to it to define it. So it'll have a light gray background, which is this background color light gray, and then have a margin of 5 pixels around it at the very minimum, so that it's going to make it clear what the flag is. We do the same sort of mutations here. I add this select here so that we can actually set the order of the column. So I want nationality, flag, and then everything else in the same order that exists. Same code otherwise, and oh right, and then we got to print out best table ever.
Yep.
Oh, I need to. There we go. Now we've got the flags, and the nice thing is they've got these borders around them, so you can see very clearly what the flag is. I don't know, I just thought it made it look a little bit nicer, order it a little bit better with nationality, flag, %. But you know, that's how you can do that. How you can add flags into your data set there. The next thing she asked for was conditional formatting that we do there, and so what you can do is we've got two different cases that you can do. So this beginning part is the same as this last table that we did, where we do. And oh wait, we have this addition of North America. So this is for our conditional formatting. So is the astronaut from the US or Canada? If it is, it becomes true. Otherwise, it's false, and we populate the field North America with that. That's a pretty basic one. Everything otherwise, the code is more or less the same. The new pieces are these lines of code here. Patrick, you want to take us through that?
Yeah, so to do the conditional formatting, what I did here within the list, which Ellis said is used for our styling, I created a column here called most common occupation. That's what the column is called, rather. And then I used the formatter function. And all I'm going to do here is I am going to give it a if-else statement. So this is basically what it's saying is if else MSP. So if the job is MSP, color it red. If it's commander, color it blue. And then anything else, I think it was flight engineer for China, color it green. So that's super easy. If you were doing this by, let's say it was a numeric value. Let's say we wanted to color the numbers of the % of astronauts, let's say anytime it was over 50% for a country, we could do that in the same way you would write an if-else statement. So it'd be X greater than 0.5 green, otherwise red, right? So same type of thing. Conditional formatting, it's all going to work the same way. Function's going to work the same way. It's just an if-else statement. The other thing I did was I added a column here, not that Lauren asked for this, but I thought this is a fun one that I've used before when I built these kinds of things, where if you're monitoring a process, let's say you're monitoring athletes' training load and health, you might want to set up some sort of flagging system that lets everybody know, let's say, hey, 4 out of the last 7 training sessions, this athlete has been over some sort of threshold that we've established as being meaningful. So I created this little North American tag, which was why we created the variable. If they were from USA or Canada, it's true. Otherwise, it's false. So it's just a Boolean value. And we come down here, same thing as we do with the conditional formatting. It's an if-else statement. So if X, if the variable in North America, if it's X, if it's true, we're going to make it green. So if they're from North America, they're green. Otherwise, they're going to be red. And then the I context, what you're going to see when we run this is going to give it a check mark or an X, and it's going to write a yes or a no. So it, again, not something you'd probably use for this kind of dashboard, but it's something that you might use if you were building this to, say, track a process that you need to flag for a decision maker. So there we go. So there's our North American folks, yes or no. And then we see most common occupation is in our conditionally formatted way.
Yep. There you go, and that's how you can do some conditional formatting with format table.
Yeah.
Then the last question that we got was, how do I save this? How do I, I've generated this, it's inside my my RStudio, but how do I put this out so I can use it otherwise? Share it with my executive maybe. So the way you can do that is HTML widgets, which is the package that provides the background, the juice for all HTML, or a lot of the HTML widgets you'll see in R. What you can do is you can use the function save widget. And so that captures everything. It generates the HTML, it spins it all together and saves it for you in a nice format for you. Format table by default, like it is an HTML widget, but it needs to be expressly converted into one using their format table as HTML widget. So I think this is a unique case. Most HTML widgets, you don't have to do that. But in this case, you do. And then finally the file. So this is like any other, like if you're writing a CSV or anything like that, just defining where you want it to be saving as. Save it, define it as an HTML. Then we run that, it'll save it, and now we can go in and we've got the best table 2 ever. We can view it in our browser, and it's exactly the same. And we can email that out and share. It's completely self-contained. There's no external things that exist. It'll display as you expect it to on everyone else's computers.
Cool.
And that's how you can share it.
And conditionally format it and add flags.
Boom. All the things. You didn't even ask for that last
things.
one. And we
got
that.
all the things.
All right, so now we were inspired by this, and we wanted to do a little bit more with format table. So we went through and we did some dashboard design. So Patrick, sorry for scrolling really quickly. Let me restart my R session. And Patrick, why don't you take us through this?
Yeah. So we'll go through this. Some of the steps are stuff that we do pretty much every time. So the way that we kind of work is, one of us starts out by creating something by looking at the Tidy Tuesday data, and then we pass it back and forth and iterate. So a lot of the steps in here, since I was the one that started this script, a lot of the steps are things that I did like when I first sat down and looked at the data and said, oh, let me see what's there. So some of these things are things that you always see, like counts and bar plots. And so we'll kind of go over those quickly. But, we load in all of our packages, obviously the things we're going to be requiring for our dashboard. We set our theme, and I create this little percent total function. You'll see why when we get to creating the actual dashboard. Okay, so we'll load in the data with Ellis's package, Tidy Tuesday R. We're going to grab the space astronaut data set from the TT data. And I just start with some simple exploratory data analysis. So I always start with a little peek at the data, things like blimps, column names, dimensions, get my bearings. And then the one thing I always do is I always want to know how much missing data am I dealing with, either because do I have to remove a column or do I have to impute values. And this is a pretty darn clean data set, so we're in good shape there. And that was just done using the summarize across function, so super easy. I just sum is NA for every variable in the data set, and then I transpose it so it looks vertical for me. It's easier on my eyes, I guess.
Yeah, looks nicer.
Yeah. So I start out with just some simple kind of visuals and exploration of the data. How many unique nationalities are there? 40. Okay, great. Which countries have gone to space the most? This is just a simple kind of count type of plot where I plot the head, which is going to be the top 10 or 5, 1, 2, 3, 6.
The head is kind of a weird one. Like, you'd expect it to take a flat number like 5, but
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, obviously you can see U.S. and USSR or Russia, as we now call it, the well-publicized arms race to get to space. So that's the battle back and forth there that we see. What years were the missions taken? This is, again, is just a simple. It's going to be a simple plot. You can see the blips where there was probably more commitment because there was less things going on in the world and people had more time to focus on space, I guess.
Yeah. More dedication for whatever reason.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
The next one was I wanted to build a Plotly figure. So what has been the space mission trajectory? So I'm going to just look at those top 6 data, or top 6 nationalities, because those were the main ones. So I filter those out first. And I do a mutate here. So, when you're looking at stuff across years, it's sometimes helpful to look at it based on decades. So I do it by, I first calculate the floor of the year of the mission divided by 10. So that's going to get me the min values, it's the floor value, round everything down within that decade. And then I multiply by 10 back again to get it up to the 1960, 1980, 2010, etc. I'm going to do my group by nationality and decade. And then I'm going to summarize the number of missions by the. Do we do some? Isn't it? Should be some.
So that's later on.
No. That's later on. Yeah, that's. So we do number of missions. We do the max number of missions in that decade per nationality. And we create this GG plot, which is it's going to be a still plot. It's going to be not very exciting, and it's hard to get pumped up about that.
I don't know. I'm pretty excited.
I said, you're excited. Okay. Well, one person. That makes one of us. I decided, it'll be much cooler if we look at this Plotly wise. So we had loaded Plotly earlier. I do all the same stuff with the, all the same, exactly, all the same data frame building there. The only thing that I pipe in at the end, and we save it into this thing called highlight country, is I pipe in highlight key nationality, because that's what I'm going to want to be as my selector key within the Plotly code. Yeah. So now we're good to go with that. The next thing I do is I'm going to initiate my Plotly object. So I take that highlight country. I want to color the lines initially black, and I want to group by nationality. So that's going to make up the figure. And then I'm going to create the time series. So I'm grouping by nationality, and I'm adding lines to my figure based on decade on the x-axis and the number of missions per decade, which we calculated above in that highlight country variable or object, number of missions per decade for each nationality. And then we're going to make this whole thing interactive. So I'm going to take that time series figure. I want it to be Plotly clickable. So I use Plotly click. I want select eyes equals true. That's going to allow us, you'll see, to type in names. And we're going to run this. And
I'm getting an error. What did I not do?
You didn't run big. Oh,
time series not found. Eval. This is all on me. What did I do wrong? It generated highlight country.
Start it over.
Boom, boom.
Oh.
Boom. That's a warning.
That's a group.
There we go.
Here we go. So, okay, so initially it starts out and you're like, what's this? So why don't we go up to our little selector box, select Canada maybe. Okay, they're in red. And then let's select another country and make them maybe blue. So the next country is USA, they're blue. Again, it's everybody loves a good tooltip, so you can scroll over and get the year and the number of missions, maximum number of missions.
Yep.
Decade. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a good way to visualize it. You can kind of play around with that, have like, I want to just do a quick visual comparison, but then you get like the nice ghosting. So if you want to have look at how you compare to other trajectories over time, so like multiple athletes or something like that.
Yeah, some ways I might use this is use that format table that Lauen built and put this all into a Shiny app. So we have a tab that's like a table and a tab that's if you want to see it and play with it visually.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so the rest of these are just kind of simple bar plots, number of missions per country, average number of missions per country, and then we finish up by looking at the gender. So this will be a column plot. You can see the large discrepancy between male and female space missions, obviously. There it is.
Well, it exists.
It exists. It's real.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's build our dashboard. So I start out and I say these are the variables that I need for my dashboard. Nationality, number of missions per decade, number of different astronauts who have had a mission, and then the percentage of female astronauts who have had a mission. So I'm going to create some data frames that summarize this data. The first one, astronauts per decade, we're going to do the same thing by evaluating this based on the decade year. So we create that same variable decade using the floor function. We're grouping by nationality and decade. We're getting the length of the unique name within the summarize function. We arrange our data by decade, and then we're going to pivot the data wider. And the reason why is right now it'll be a long format. So it would be like USA, 1960, USA, 1970, et cetera. We're going to spin that out wide so that each of the decades becomes a column. And you'll see why I do that in the table when we build our sparklines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
It looks like what?
Cool. All right, and then we're going to count the number of unique astronauts per country. So this is just a simple thing. We've done it a million times here. We group by nationality. We find the distinct name of the astronaut, and then we summarize the number of astronauts and astronauts. And then finally, to grab the percentage of female astronauts, we're doing group by nationality and sex. We're going to find the distinct names of the individuals, and we're grouping by nationality, and we're doing a count. So that'll produce a count of male and female. And we're going to calculate the percent of females as the n count divided by the sum of n. So basically, for that nationality, the sum of males and females. And then we're just going to filter out females. And the only variables we need, since we don't need their names for this dashboard, is going to be nationality and the percent of females. We run that, and we join it all together. And
so yeah, we do a series of left joins here, so you can kind of add them together, and these are just adding on to make your data set wider and wider based on a shared key field. We've discussed left joins a fair amount in past TidyX's. So let's do a quick
I also
head.
made all the NAs and the percent female 0. So
yeah.
That's the other thing. All right, so now we're ready for our dashboard design. So we scroll down here. We're going to actually build some sparklines at the end in the final column of our dashboard, which are really fun to use. So that's what we do here. I'm setting up a variable called trend line. And that trend line is going to be representing columns 2 through 7, which are the decades columns. So I'm using an apply function over those columns, the 1960 through 2010. Margin 1 tells us that we're working in columns.
Got ahead of myself.
And here's the function. So I'm basically creating this HTML tool in the sparkline function. I'm taking the numeric values and I'm going to create a line plot, or it's going to be an area plot. And then we're wrapping that in as character so that it's actually a character value of information as the last column of our data set.
Yep. So we have final here. We can actually take a quick look at the trend line there. It's a lot of HTML.
Yeah.
It's kind of difficult to read. We're not going to worry about that, though. We're going to let
R work its magic.
Yeah, R in a web browser do its magical stuff for us.
All right, so there's a few steps to finish up. First one is we're going to create the plot as an HTML widget. So I've got my DF final data set. I do a little bit of renaming at the top. That just is renaming so that we have the column headers the way that we'd like to see them. We're going to arrange descending by total astronauts, so going from high to low. And then we're going to use that format table function. And I align the columns a bit differently. I align them based on how I want to see them with regard to the things that I'm doing underneath, like putting bars in and things like that. So the first column I set to left, because I always like the first column to be left. It's pleasing on my eyes. And then the next, the years columns for the decades, I set to center. And then the last two columns, I'm going to right align. And you'll see what that looks like in a second. Then we use the list, which helps us give the table kind of its dolling up there, make it look pretty. So the total astronauts column is going to have a bar underneath it. Now, unlike Lauren's plot, where she had it actually as a percentage, I kept the raw counts. And because of that, if I was to run a bar underneath those, the largest count, in that case the USA, would be so wide it would drown out any other bar for any other country, and it looks just silly. So within color bar, I say, I'm going to keep total astronauts the count, but I'm going to pass it that function that I wrote called percent total, which is effectively similar to what Lauren had. It's basically taking the total counts and it's putting them all on this relative scale to each other as a percentage, 0 to 1. Then the percent female. So like I talked about with Lauren's plot, she did the multiply by 100 for her percentages when they were on that scale from 0 to 1. You can do this straight away in format table. You just tell it the column that you want and say equals percent, and it's going to go ahead and turn it into a percentage for you and even give it a little percent sign at the end. And then we finish by giving it the as HTML widget function. So we'll run that.
There we go.
Okay.
So now we've got it as an HTML widget. We're happy.
Yep. We're happy. We're going to add our sparkline in.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Why don't you go through it? Why don't you explain it?
All right,
this
so yeah, we'll add our sparkline. We'll add our sparkline into that output dashboard element that we created. So we have our output dashboard dependencies. We have our HTML widget here. And so what this does is it's taking the sparkline that we created all the way at the top of this little chunk, and it's turning it into basically turning it into an HTML widget so that it's usable within the visual that we're about to plot out to our viewer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got a bunch of JavaScript in the background because when we saw the HTML there, it doesn't look pretty. It's kind of hard to view, and so it's got some JavaScript that's going to run in the background on rendering, and it's going to actually spin it up and make it look pretty nice for us. So that's telling it. It's like here's where you get the JavaScript that you want here.
Yeah, do something.
All right.
And then we run our dashboard, and there we go. So now we have nationality. We have our decades, the number of missions. We've got the total astronauts. With the bars, you can see that they're scaled to the percentage rather than a total value. So 344 doesn't drown out everything else.
Mm-hmm.
We have our percent of females already built right in. And then we have our sparklines, our trend line for each country. And it is also a tooltip because, again, everybody loves a tooltip. You can scroll over that and get the values that are in each of those decade columns. So this is a pretty fun little dashboard that people can kind of take and use if this was something that you were doing like on a weekly basis for a project at work, tracking things over time. The sparklines really help. And then I think the last step is Ellis is going to save this as an HTML.
Yep, and so we're following the same sort of stuff that we did before. So we've already got it saved as an HTML widget, so we don't got to define that again. I'm going to add a title in, so that way it shows up like when you hover over the tab, it shows the title. It makes it a little bit nicer. We're going to save it using using a file path. We're using here the package here to define where we're saving it, so it's relative to our project. And then setting self-contained to be true to make sure that it's got all the JavaScript within the HTML and not saving it as an external like JavaScript file or stuff to support the web page. So we'll run that. And then now we've got this saved. We can go to our files, and now we've got the where is it? Seven decades of space. So view this, and shaboom! There you go.
You're ready to work at NASA.
We're ready to work, NASA. We're you can hire us. It's fine. We'll create some beautiful dashboards for you. Yeah. So this is a great way to be using tables combined with visualization to do all this fun stuff.
And that's TidyX 19, isn't it?
Yeah, that's TidyX 19 right there, wrapping it up. Thank you so much, Lauren, for letting us go through and explain how your code works. And then also coming back to us with questions. So we had some stuff to work off of and put that together for everybody because I doubt you're the only one with questions. Yeah, as always, my name is Ellis Hughes. I am on Twitter at Ellis_Hughes.
And I'm Patrick Ward, and you can find me on Twitter at OSP Patrick, and you can get in touch with both of us at tidy.explained@gmail.com.
Yep.
And the Twitter handle.
I
nearly forgot.
I can't forget that at tidy_explained. Just tag us. We're happy. We're both on it, so we'll be checking that out. Or leave comments down below, and we will try to answer them. Thank you once again for listening to us, and keep on exploring your world.
Thanks.
Thank you.